They fined my dad $5,000 while he was dying. I used their own bylaws to shut them down. This happened over 20 years ago, but I can still remember the incident vividly. My dad was a Vietnam vet who had retired to Florida after being stationed at one of the bases in Florida during the Cold War. After he retired from the Air Force, he started having health issues that would come and go, but for the most part, he lived a fairly normal life. In 2002, he started feeling sick again, and his primary care doctor referred him to an oncologist. After a few months of tests, he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, which had already spread to his liver and several lymph nodes. They gave him about 6 months to live. Fortunately, my dad was able to keep working up until 2 weeks before he died. Then he had to take time off to go through chemo. He died in hospice care at home 8 months after his diagnosis. He was only 60. Meanwhile, all this is going on. My mum and dad have been living in their house in a retirement community for about 4 years at this point. The house had been built in the early 1980s and was getting pretty old. It was built on a canal with a very large backyard. The retirement community was unlike other communities we'd lived in where the yard maintenance was handled by the HOA. We always took pride in our yard and kept it up really well. Now, while my parents were going through all the cancer stuff, they fell behind on yard maintenance because Dad couldn't do it. Mom was too busy running him to doctors and hospice care. When I say this place was built on a canal, I mean there was a canal literally 20 feet from the back door. It was something like 3 or 4 feet deep and maybe 40 feet wide. The water flowed from the road in front of the house to the back corner of the property, and then exited via a pipe under the seawall onto the main canal. The HOA sent my mom a letter saying that they were fining her $500 because the grass was too tall. She just laughed and said, "Are you kidding me? You're gonna fine me when my husband is dying." They didn't seem to care. She had to pay the fine, or she could take it to a hearing. But the way the bylaws are written, the board's decision was final and not subject to appeal. So fast forward a couple months. Dad died, Mum buried him, and then she went to work on getting the house ready to sell. First thing she did was pull out the covenants, conditions and restrictions, and she wanted to make sure that everything was okay as far as the sale. She found out that according to the bylaws, you could get fines for overgrown grass and weeds, but it had to be addressed in writing first. There was a process that had to be followed. They just fined her without following the process. Now, keep in mind that the board members are volunteers and the community isn't that big, so there's no paid management company. The board members are neighbors. Mum wrote letters requesting that they undo the fine and refund the money. Of course, they refused. So Mom filed an appeal with the county clerk's office. She attached copies of the relevant sections of the CCRs and bylaws, along with copies of the violation notice and the denial of her appeal. 2 days later, the board held an emergency meeting, called my mum and asked why she was appealing the fine. When she told them that they didn't follow their own rules, they tried to argue that it was just an oversight. She told them that according to the bylaws, they had no choice but to reconsider the fine, and that she would follow the correct procedures if they didn't. They reluctantly agreed and voted to remove the fine. Shortly after that, the house sold. Years later, I still wonder if they changed the bylaws so that they would have to deal with that BS again. Edit to answer some questions people have asked. No, my mum didn't have to pay out of pocket to file the appeal. It was included in the filing fee that the HOA had to pay when they recorded the covenants. The filing fee covered things like this. As far as I know, the only cost to my mom was the postage to send the letter asking them to undo the fine. That was probably 75 cents. Down in the comments, I wonder how many people are paying their HOA fees on time now after this story. That is a good question. and I wonder the same thing. Oh, look at this one. A guy named Aaron said, I once had an HOA president show up at my door unannounced at 6:30 a.m. on a Saturday. He was adamant that I mow my lawn immediately. Mind you, it was a beautiful Saturday morning, 80 degrees, sunny skies, and I had every intention of mowing my lawn that day. But because this jackass showed up at my door at 6:30 a.m. on a Saturday, I decided to spend the day shooting my model rocket instead. And then someone asked, is it normal for HOEs to have their own police force? To which Aaron replied, yes, actually, they can and do. The HOA in my neighborhood has a contract with the local PD to handle all HOA-related law enforcement. It's in our CC and Rs. They usually don't do anything unless it's serious. Most of the time, if there is an issue, they'll just send a certified letter, but they do have the authority to do whatever the police would normally do. Who? Someone asked, do they know they can terminate the contract at any time? If not, they should. To which Aaron responded, yeah, I think they know that. The sheriff won't enforce some stupid HOA rules, but they can and do handle petty stuff like parking violations and disputes over fences. I don't have a problem with it. In fact, I support it. Another gem. Another story. We got Caren down here. She says, I live in an HOA, and I am the only one who does unbelong to the Facebook group. I recently had surgery, and my neighbor brought me a lovely fruit basket and asked how I was doing. She also mentioned that she was looking forward to seeing me at the next HOA meeting. What does that mean? Do HOA members have meetings where we talk about our neighbor's business? How is that legal? If it's a private community, why are outsiders allowed? I actually have a story about that. I used to work for a property management company, and we managed a bunch of mobile home parks. One of our larger communities had an elected HOA board. Every year they de-hold their election for the board, and every year the same 3 people would win. Come to find out they were best friends and related somehow. One time I had a resident call me complaining that the HOA board wasn't doing their job. I asked her, what makes you think that? And she told me that the board only ever met once a month, and they were unaddressing any of the problems in the park. She wanted me to make them fix the roads, clean the clubhouse, and repave the pool. I told her I'd pass her complaints along. But they're elected officials, and I don't tell the residents what the board does. She got pissed and started yelling at me, so I hung up on her. Later that week, I received a strongly worded letter from the board telling me to stop giving out information to residents. I called them and asked them to walk it back because they were elected officials, and I am their hired help. I work for them. I'm supposed to give them information, and they not supposed to tell me how to do my job. They begrudgingly agreed to meet with me, and we came up with a system where I could give them information, but they could also tell me what they wanted me to tell people. At the end of the meeting, I asked them why they only met once a month. They told me that they were friends, and that the job of HOA board wasn't important, so they didn't need to meet more than once a month. I looked at each of them and said, you realize you're reacting like a small group of friends running a business that doesn't work for you, right? It looks like you guys are playing at being HOA board members. If you're not willing to put in the work, then you need to step down and let people who want the job take your seats. They got the hint and stepped down at the next election. All right, that is today's HOA story. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please leave a like, and I'll see you in the next Reddit story.